Hello everyone, my name is Elizabeth. Welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be the first of a series that I wanted to do for a while, and that's the Let's Be Honest series, where I make videos that are a little more chatty and maybe I cover topics that are a little more personal. In today's video, I wanted to talk about my experience with intrusive thoughts and OCD and anxiety and tell you guys a little bit of what I went through and just some things that have helped me out and just share my experience. In no way is this video a cure for anything. I'm not giving you medical advice. I'm not a doctor. This is just me sharing my story and my own personal experience. And I think that it's a beautiful thing that more and more people are opening up about mental health and sharing their own stories, because when you are dealing with it, I feel like it's so easy to just feel completely insane and alone and like no one is going to understand you, and that's a very scary and isolating feeling. I feel like mental health is just still a little far from being completely understood, and I think that as long as people are sharing what they've been through and the things that have helped them, we can be gathering more and more information and maybe coming closer to understanding what's really going on and helping lots of people to feel better. Different things work for different people. The only thing that I can do is tell you what I've been through, and hopefully you'll find something to be helpful or inspiring, and or at least just not feel alone if you are going through something similar. So basically, I've dealt with intrusive thoughts and OCD, I feel like since I was about 8 years old, 8 or 9. And I think that it started more as OCD when I was a little kid. Like to touch something a certain amount of times, or say something in my head a certain amount of times, or like pet all the toys in my room, and just weird things like that. And no one really thought anything of it because I guess they just thought that it's just little me being weird. I want to say when I was about in middle school, that's when the intrusive thoughts really started kicking in, and that was a very scary thing. And if you've dealt with them before, you know how terrifying they are. And basically, if you don't know what intrusive thoughts are, I believe it's a form of OCD, but it comes in thought form, and it's when you're basically drowned in terrifying thoughts, like the worst things that you can ever imagine. They're very brutal and very horrific, and I guess you probably think, well, just stop thinking them. Why are you thinking them? But the worst part is that it's not really you thinking them. It's just these terrible thoughts are completely just bashing themselves into your head, and you can't do anything about it. You know yourself that you're not actually thinking them, and you keep telling yourself that, and you keep trying to convince yourself that I'm not a bad person, like I would never think something like this, but they just keep on pushing and pushing, and it's just so scary and draining and overwhelming. They started happening when I believe in like 7th grade. I honestly thought that I was possessed. I did not know what to think. I just prayed a lot because I honestly thought I was possessed, because that was the best way to describe it, because it's just something that's completely taking over you and you just don't know how to handle it and you don't know how to deal with it. It's a really scary thing, especially as a kid, and the last thing that you want to do is go and tell someone because you don't want them to think that you're insane. And so I just kind of kept it to myself, and I would read the Bible and I would pray and just try to calm myself down in some kind of way, but it was super overwhelming, and I would just cry and be terrified. So I was dealing with OCD, just kind of like physical things, like I had to like organize things a certain way, or like circle something with my eyes a certain amount of times. And then around middle school, that's when the thoughts started kicking in, and they would come and go, and then my OCD would get worse at times, and then it would get better. And I remember like a big thing as a teenager that I had to do with OCD is I had to like straighten out all the shoes a certain way, like they all had to stand very neatly, and it wasn't about being clean, it was just this like urging feeling that if you don't do this, like the world is gonna like explode, or like something bad is gonna happen. And no matter how hard I would try to convince myself that that's not true, the feeling is just too overpowering to really fight it. And if anyone has dealt with OCD before, I think that you can definitely understand this. And so basically I would have to like organize shoes a certain way, and that was like a big thing for a while. I remember that like one instance I was like in a Marshalls or something, and you know that things aren't really that organized there, and so I felt like I went into the shoe department and I felt like I had to straighten out like every pair of shoes. And it sounds really weird, and it's so odd to even say this out loud because anything to do with OCD or intrusive thoughts, it's all really odd sounding. But when it's like happening to you, you can't really just convince yourself that it's weird, like don't do it. The problem is that it's just way too overpowering. And so I had to like straighten out all the shoes, and I'm sure that the store was very thankful for that. But just being young and not understanding what's going on, it was just a really scary and annoying thing, and I just didn't know how to deal with it at all. And I did notice that it would get worse at night or when I feel tired or overwhelmed by something. So that was one of the first things that I noticed, and I think it's really important to really observe yourself and see the times when it gets better and when it gets worse. What are you doing? What are you eating? Are you exercising? Are you more tired, or are you more stressed during the times when it kicks in? I think it's super important to observe, really start taking those notes, because in the end of the day, what I realized is that anything that happens in your mind or in your body, it's not out of nowhere. Something is triggering it. Something is happening. Yes, it might be like a chemical disbalance or something, but something is causing it. And I think that the physical, the mental, and the spiritual are all components that need to be looked at before coming up with a solution. And I feel that's why like medications and stuff kind of frustrate me at times, because I'm like, well, what exactly are we fixing? Like, what's exactly wrong with me that I need to take this med? And now in no way am I telling you guys not to take medication. It does help a lot of people, and a lot of people do need it, but that is for everyone to decide for themselves. I personally did not want to go to a doctor because I felt like I've seen other family members take medication. In some instances, it helped them, and in some, it made things worse, physically and mentally. And so I was really scared that I'm just gonna go and they're gonna tell me that I'm insane and I'm gonna be stuck on this drug for the rest of my life. These are just thoughts that I was having as a kid. But thankfully, it wasn't that bad that it was completely taking over my life. I could still function and do school and everything. It would just give me anxiety, and it would kind of drain my energy. I didn't feel like I really wanted to see anyone professionally. I'm definitely not saying that that is not a way to go, because it absolutely is, and it can absolutely change your life for the better. So that's just for everyone to decide for themselves. And I don't think I really talked to friends or anyone about going through this, because I didn't really know how to even start, and especially with intrusive thoughts, because just saying that out loud, I still don't want to say those thoughts out loud even to the camera now, because you know that it's not you, and you know that they're like just such terrible things that you don't even like want to talk about them. But eventually it got really overwhelming, and I did go to my dad and I told him that I just get these urges to do these things, and I don't know how to stop, and it's really like taking over me, and it's really overwhelming. And I've had family members that have dealt with different mental health issues in my family, so I knew that he would at least somewhat understand. It wasn't completely out of the blue, and this was like, I think, in my later teens. And what he told me is completely not anything medical. So if this makes sense to someone, then great, but this is in no way an explanation for anything, or it's nothing medical. But it did help me to kind of get a little bit more of a perspective on what was going on. And he basically said to just look at this OCD as this like dark cloud of energy that comes to you, and it basically feeds off of your emotions and off of what you give it by doing those OCD rituals. So basically the cloud of OCD survives by you giving it your own energy that you drain through doing those OCD rituals. But to look at it as something that's outside of you, and not something that's like living inside, that's not something that's actually a part of you. And instead of fighting it or resisting it, instead just acknowledge it for what it is, and let it know that you understand what's going on, and that you know that there's this dark cloud over you, and you know what it wants you to do, and almost just like welcome it and acknowledge it, and know that it's not going to affect you, that it is not who you are. And I know that this might not make sense at all, but at the time, it really did kind of put things into perspective a little bit, and it helped me to start observing it in a different light, I guess. And in no way did it help me to get over OCD overnight, like absolutely not. And honestly, like I still have a little bit of OCD that's a little more in form of anxiety, I would say, but thankfully I haven't really dealt with anything as bad for a while now. What he said was actually the start of me understanding it a little bit more, but that actually got me to start doing my own research and going on forums and seeing what other people go through and what other people say. And I've actually saw over and over again that, especially with intrusive thoughts, that the more you fight them, the worse they become. And instead of fighting them, you almost have to try to neutralize them instead of like beating them down, because the more you're going to try to fight them, the worse they're going to get. Basically, instead of getting scared of them or anticipating them or being terrified by them, just welcome them. Be okay with them happening. And the more okay you are with them happening, because you know that it's not who you are, you know that it's not you thinking them, the less and less they're gonna become. And I came across this one book and it was absolutely life-changing, and it's called Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, and I'm gonna link it down below. I strongly suggest that you read it. It's a little more on the spiritual side of things and all about just like quieting the chatter in your head, really taking control of yourself and your mind and not letting the chatter run your life. What I read was almost a little bit like what my dad talked to me about, only in more depth, and so it really made sense to me. It really helped me to start to calm down a little bit and start understanding meditation a little more, and just kind of the separation between who I really am and the thoughts that are in my head. And I have the power to choose what I want to think, or to choose what thoughts I want to focus on. And another thing that I heard that was super helpful is that you are not your thoughts. A lot of the time we think that everything that goes on in our head must be us and has to be a part of us. But you actually have the power to choose what it is that you do want to associate with. You are the thoughts that you believe, that you focus on, that you allow to grow. And that can happen without your control, and it takes practice and training in a way to get the control and understand how to control your mind and how to control your focus. It's like exercising your body. You have to exercise your mind and your brain. It takes time, but it is possible. And you can choose which thoughts you want to focus on, what reality you want to create, and what thoughts you want to associate with. And I think that that was a huge help with dealing with intrusive thoughts. Another thing is, again, I've noticed that when I would wake up super early or go to bed late or not really nourish my body as well, they would get worse. And these might sound like obvious things, but I think one of the biggest things that have helped me was doing that observation and really starting to take care of my body physically and mentally and spiritually. So when I started taking care of myself and making sure that I sleep a certain amount of hours and eat a certain way, exercise, allow myself to have a creative outlet, and again, while doing all of this, I practice like letting my thoughts go and just allowing them to float without me having to invest in every single thought, especially the thoughts that I did not want to invest in or think. And just all of that as a combination slowly started to help me calm down a little bit. And I think it's all about just slowing down that momentum. As soon as you grab onto like a negative thought, it's just spiral into something even worse. But the same as if you manage to grab on into something positive, it's going to spiral into something more positive. If you're going really, really fast into something negative, then you can't just jump from that onto something completely positive. You first kind of have to slow that down and neutralize it a little bit and then choose a better feeling thought. So basically just taking those baby steps, just trying to calm your mind down as much as possible. And again, I want to say that different things work for different people, and if it's really overwhelming, then I think it is a good idea to go and talk to someone, whether it's a friend or a family member or a professional, a doctor, a therapist, whoever it is. I think that that is the first step, and as scary as it may sound, it is very helpful. Make sure it's someone that you trust and someone that you can rely on. And if you feel like you don't really have anyone like that in your life, then like I said, then just find a good therapist to talk to. But just saying it out loud is already such a freeing thing, because when you're dealing with something like that, you feel like you're in jail. You feel like you're just completely locked in your head, and this is just gonna eat you up completely, and there's gonna be nothing left of you. But as soon as you let it out, you kind of start to get things into perspective a little more, because when we're just locked in our heads, that's when everything seems to be the worst that it can be. But as soon as it's said out loud, it kind of starts to wind down a tiny bit. So it's very helpful to talk to someone. But I do want to say that before coming up with any solutions, I think that it's so important to do your own research. And don't take anything that I say too hard and let it be your end result. Don't let whatever one doctor says to you be the end result. I think it's important to talk to different people, read forums, do research, read books on this topic, read about meditation and how your physical health affects your mental health and vice versa. Now, understand when it gets better, when it gets worse. Talk to different doctors, talk to different therapists, psychiatrists, whoever. This is not a video to bash on medicine at all, but I think that it's easy to just take a pill for one thing and just kind of let that be your end goal. But in the end of the day, it's not always solving whatever it is that's actually causing the problem. And like I said so many times, medicine does help a lot of people, and so if you need it, take it. And I think that it's part of the solution. But while you're doing that, keep on looking for answers and keep on finding different ways that can help you out. There's so much research now about how certain vitamin deficiencies can really affect your mental health, and how certain gut and like stomach problems affect your mental health as well. And I know that a lot of people are saying that's just BS. A lot of people are trying it out and it's actually working for them. But I feel like if someone is doing something that's actually benefiting them and actually helping them, you have no right to shut that down if it's not hurting anyone. So I think it's so important that when you are looking for answers, be open-minded, and like I said, don't just do what one person told you to do, but look at things in different perspectives, listen to different people, really observe your own body and see what works for you personally, and be open-minded, because what works for one person might not work for you, and that is absolutely okay. So basically, that's my experience with having OCD and intrusive thoughts. It's not in too much detail, so if you do have specific questions, then do let me know and just leave a comment or send me a message, and I would love to see what you have to say, and I will definitely get back to you. No one ever should feel like they're insane or alone, because you're not, and it's much more common than you know. It's important to try your best to understand your body and do your research and talk to others, and just know that you have the strength and the power within you to get through whatever it is that you are going through. I'm very excited to open up the series with this video. If you have any topics that you want me to cover, then just leave a comment below and let me know. I hope that you guys have a beautiful day filled with light and inspiration, and I'll see you in the next video.